As of last week, Space Engineers 2 will be receiving weekly updates to include new blocks to the game. The first of which included the half wall and half window blocks that you can see here, and this week they added a set of blocks that many people have been asking for: conveyors. Whilst these conveyors are only cosmetic, a lot of players wanted them to be added to the game so that they could build ships with conveyors in them in order to future-proof them for the game's future survival mode. You can see they've got an assortment of different variations, and there are also large ones and small ones as they are in Space Engineers 1, but as you can see, as this is Space Engineers 2, you can place these smaller conveyors on the same grid as your larger ones. And we have things like the conveyor converter to switch between large conveyors and small conveyors. Conveyors are going to be the place where the new grid system really shines. Because they're not a full large block in size, we're going to be able to use the new unified grid system to better hide conveyors, better use them for detailing and all kinds of things like that. And also, they look really good with the new destruction system, where you can blast holes in the conveyors, which just looks really good. Going with the new blocks that are being added weekly to the game, we were also shown off some blocks that are currently being prototyped, and these are two sets of modular blocks, the first being this modular pipe that you can see here, and these pipes are made up of 4 different blocks. That being the pipe bend over here, and then you have the pipe short, and then you have the pipe attachment, and then over here you have the pipe long. And the idea that you can use these different blocks together, with presumably some other variations as well, to cosmetically detail your ships, and because they're modular, you can use them in all different kinds of ways to do that. The other set of blocks they are prototyping are the modular structure blocks, which as you can see is a set of walls, pillars and frames, and the idea, again, you can place these in any orientation to create any number of different wall or corridor configurations you desire. So rather than just having a prefab wall that you place down like you do in Space Engineers 1, you can see over here they've placed down the bottom of the wall and then 3 wall panels and then the top of the wall here. And then the same for the pillars, bottom of the pillar, 3 middle pillar blocks and then the top of the pillar here. And then using these door frame blocks, they've built much larger than usual entrances to this hallway. Modular sets of blocks like these will massively improve what you're able to build, because you'll be able to add just an insane amount of detail with all the different permutations of these blocks that you can place. Like the example on the right is a very simple example. Because of the unified grid system, you can mix and match these blocks in hundreds of different ways, making dozens of unique corridors for every ship and base you build. So these sets of modular blocks will massively improve the potential of what people can build. In my previous video, we spoke a lot about the next update for Space Engineers 2, which is Vertical Slice 1.2, and this will include a bunch of improvements to the game, such as the new jetpack boost system, which we covered in my last video, the changes to the debug gun and other improvements. They will be adding voxel debris, which are currently not in the game. They're making changes to third person, which will allow you to offset the camera, so you can actually see what you're doing when you're in third person, rather than it being blocked by your head. And they'll be changing the way that you fly ships with a new feature called target-based gyro, which we'll be speaking about more in a minute. Vertical Slice 1.2 will also include a bunch of other improvements that we'll cover when the update releases, and that might be very soon. We've been told that Vertical Slice 1.2 has been frozen, which means they can't add any more features to it and they're just bug testing it at the moment. Space Engineers 2's code was frozen 2 months before the game released, and with Vertical Slice 1.2 not being an entire game, I'd assume it probably doesn't need 2 months worth of testing before they release it. However, signs point to Space Engineers 1 receiving an update soon, and I don't know what's coming first. This could come out before it or after it. I'm not really sure at the moment, but the point is, Vertical Slice 1.2 is probably coming out at the end of this month or next month. One of the main features that developers are excited about is the new target-based gyro system. This feature is an improvement to the way that you fly ships, very similar to other games like War Thunder and Elite Dangerous, I think. I've not played either of those games, but people have told me that this is the way they work. And you can see that with the new system, they're able to move the camera freely with their mouse, and then the ship turns to match the new direction of the camera, which is better than the way it works currently in Space Engineers 2 and in Space Engineers 1, where you move your mouse, you move a bit, you keep picking up your mouse, dragging it over and over to turn your ship around if it's especially large or lacks in gyro power. The biggest change they've shown in this week's developer diary is that there's a new UI element that shows you the direction your ship is turning. And we've also been shown it working on large ships, with it being used in the cockpit of the big red ship as you can see here. And you can see they move the mouse to point in the direction, and then the ship slowly turns as fast as it can to meet where the cursor is facing. And this is something I'm really excited to get my hands on, as this looks like a much smoother way to control your ships. Emotes, one of my favourite features of Space Engineers, and also something the developers are very keen to add to the game. They're currently working on them at the moment to add them to Vertical Slice 1.6, which isn't actually that far away, as the next update after 1.2 is 1.5, which is going to add modding, and then 1.6 is going to add improvements to the game, much like 1.2 is, but this time mainly focused on improvements to modding based on the feedback to 1.5. But now, emotes will be coming in that update as well, with the developers keen to add emotes to the game so they can use them in trailers and videos, which is also the reason that I want them. As whilst I found holding on this guy's face funny at first, this guy's really started to stare in my soul now. His dead, soulless eyes keep looking deeper and deeper. They see something forbidden, something you should definitely click below the video. So last week we were shown this dance emote, which looks incredible. And in this week's development diary, we were shown this wave animation, which is in this interesting looking cockpit that isn't currently in the game. And by interesting, I mean it's the fighter cockpit, obviously. Please comment section, please, I know. The developers have also said that they want to add a 2-character animation system. So the idea that 2 characters can do an emote together, something like a hug, for example. But it's not really clear if this is something they want to do for trailers or if they want to have 2-player emotes in game. And they also spoke about improvements to emote modding as well. So I'm going to assume that the Steam Workshop is going to have some very interesting dance emotes in the near future. They showed a brief video of the in-development of the inventory system and some consumables that will be in Space Engineers 2. However, before they even show that, I want to draw your attention to the bottom left, where we can see our health, energy, oxygen and hydrogen. And more importantly, that they're color-coded. Now, they are color-coded because they're low, which isn't necessarily new, but they never got color-coded yellow in Space Engineers 1. So presumably, red is critically low, and yellow is low. Look, the lack of colour on the Space Engineers UI has always been a criticism of mine, so I'll take what I can get. Red and yellow bars when your resources get low, it's a win. Let's just take it as a win, guys. When they open up the inventory, you can see in the top left that they have 3 consumables, which is 2 medkits and something called jetpack fuel, which I would imagine refuels your jetpack. It's important to note that the entire UI in Space Engineers 2 is a temporary one, and is by no means the final UI for the game. So if you're looking at this inventory screen and thinking, don't worry, this is more to show you the consumables work in progress than it is to show you the final inventory system of the game. But, that being said, build planner. I love the build planner. They drop these 3 consumables on the ground and we get a brief look at them. So you can see the medkit appears to be using the temporary texture of an ammo box. I don't believe that would be its final texture. And also the bottle is on the floor. And then they consume the jetpack fuel, which then refills their hydrogen to full. And then afterwards they consume the medkit and then their health slowly regenerates up to full. In my last video, I showed off a bunch of changes and improvements coming to foliage in Space Engineers 2, and we've received a bit more information regarding that in the past 2 weeks. For starters, we have this video here that shows grass swaying in the wind. As with always, YouTube bitrate absolutely destroys the appearance of this, but I'm sure when we see this in game, it's going to look really cool. I think the grass swaying in the wind along with the trees swaying in the wind is going to look so good. I can't wait to get my hands on planets and just sit there and vibe in the sunset of the savannah. We also got to look at some desert foliage, and unlike last week's foliage, it's actually HD and I can zoom in. Look at this, look how high quality this is. We got some trees on the left and we got some cacti on, well, everywhere else, and these look really good. And something I forgot to mention last video, but it's very important when it comes to foliage, is like blocks in Space Engineers 2, the foliage is going to support fracturing. So presumably you'll be able to shoot off the branches and whatever you call the branches on cactuses. The accurate term would be callowed. I googled this and this all sounds wrong and I'm going to call them branches. And whilst I'm sure there are some of you that are thinking about horticulture and I can cut this tree into a certain shape, but what this more likely means is I'm going to plow my rover straight through a tree, smashing it to bits, as opposed to whatever this is in Space Engineers 1. So, with Space Engineers 2 Vertical Slice 1.2 coming out very soon, and also that nebulous Space Engineers 1 update I'm still waiting to hear about, if you want to keep up with what's coming in both of those updates, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel, because we will of course be covering everything here like we always do. And whilst you're at it, if you want to help support this channel, you can become a member like the people on the left have, by clicking the join button.